Digital art's getting more popular as technology advances, and now there's so many apps and devices, but which one should I use? Well, you came to the right place. I've been doing digital art for about 2 years and used a few softwares and got feedback from others, so let's take a look at some digital art applications for desktops, iPads, and tablets. Some popular applications or programs you'll hear about are Procreate, Ibis Xpaint or Ibis Xpaint, Clip Studio Paint, and a bunch of others. But when I started digital art, I wasn't sure if I was going to like it, so I picked out some free applications to use. Which ones, you may ask?
Bam! Here we are, Autodesk Sketchbook from AutoCAD, available on desktop and tablets, as well as iArtbook, which unfortunately is only available on iPads. So even if you have a Mac, for example, it is not available there. So I've been using Autodesk Sketchbook since the beginning of my journey, as one of my friends was using it as well. And it has your typical tools, as you can see over here on the right hand side, you have your layers. At the top over here, you have a library of brushes that you can use, as well as its corresponding settings, so its size and the opacity of the brush, as well as your color wheel and different ways to select your colors. Alright, and here we have the gallery where all your pieces are stored. You can add new folders and drag them in to make sure you stay organized. As well, each individual piece has a naming process. So as we can see at the bottom over here, I labeled this one skate, and it tells me the dimensions of my piece as well as how many layers. And this is where I create my new sketches. So even though I've discovered other applications, why am I still using this one? So between Autodesk Sketchbook and iArtbook, I personally like the tools here a lot more, which is why I still like to do my sketches on this application. So my favorite tools here are the Distort tool, which is located over here, as well as the Predictive Stroke tool. So the Distort tool is super helpful during my sketching process. So this is one of the earlier sketches. So when I flip my canvas after, oopsies. So when I flip my canvas after each revision to check if things are looking right, this Distort tool is super helpful because it helps me move the proportions around and experiment with them to see what it's like or what the angle should be. So for example here, I think that his mask is a little off. What I can do is I go to the layer with the mask, I click the Distort tool, and I can move it around to see until it looks like it's in place like this. To the extremes, you can go like this so it's out of place. But usually it's a little nudge or some angle adjustments to make sure that my piece looks right. And I'll flip the canvas again just to make sure it looks correct. So this is super helpful, especially because my knowledge about anatomy is pretty bad. So this helps me adjust things without having to redraw them, although the lines do get blurrier each time you click any of these features in this tool. That's why I usually do a cleaner line art sketch before I go on to my final line art process and my coloring process. So the predictive stroke is also known as a stability tool in other applications or something along those lines. It's available on iArtbook, but it works better or creates smoother lines here on this program, which is especially useful in the line art process. But I don't do that here anymore, but for anyone who's starting and just wants to use one application, it's great. For example, if I click over here and have level 5 predictive stroke and I do this, it fixes my line so it's a lot smoother for me. Or for example, if I'm trying to draw a straight line, it fixes it so it's actually straight and not whatever it was before. Lastly, another tool that is available here is the Symmetry tool, which helps when drawing designs. For example, this Tsukkiyama picture that I drew back in December. So specifically for this snowflake, instead of drawing each line and measuring them to make sure they're correct, what I did was I pulled up the Symmetry tool, which is in the top over here. I can adjust it to have 6 sections, which it already over here, so 6 sections, and what you do is you can move the center to where you want to draw. So let's say I didn't really have a snowflake here, but as we can see now, if I wanted to draw like this, it'll draw in the 6 sections, which is much easier for making these designs, and I don't need to spend much time making sure they're symmetrical, as this Symmetry tool, as it's in the name, is helpful for that. Alright, so you may be thinking, if Autodesk Sketchbook is so good, why did I switch over to iArtbook? So I heard many good things about Procreate, but I wasn't sure if I was going to continue digital art when school started, and I heard about this similar app, but free, called iArtbook. So I decided to try it out, and I liked how the colors and the lines showed up, as you can see over here in this example. So on the left over here is the last piece that I fully colored on Autodesk Sketchbook, and on the right is the first piece that I did here on iArtbook. So it was Kageyama and Hinata in costumes because this was around October, so Halloween season. The technique for these two pieces didn't change much. I still did both these sketches on Autodesk Sketchbook, which is what I base my paintings off of. But as we can see, the colors here just look a lot nicer, but it kind of goes the same way. I did some shading, colored the hair. Besides the designs and the outline of each, like the topic of each piece, like, I think that the colors on the right here look a lot sharper and they just look a lot nicer. So if I zoom in this piece compared to this piece, like the lines just look a lot cleaner and a lot nicer. So there are also more settings for the brushes here on iArtbook. For example, if I just tap into this one, these are all the settings that you can change versus on iArtbook. Versus on Autodesk Sketchbook, if we go into the advanced settings for this technical pen, for example, we can see that there's all these, but there's a lot more, as we can see here on iArtbook. So that took a lot more time to get used to and adjust to, but I think that's how it works with any interface you're going to use. So I've also seen and heard many things about the effect of weighted lines and how they make a piece look nicer. So having this was super cool to me. So if I just hide these two layers, I could show you here. Like for example, the weighted line, although it's not based on pressure because I am using my finger and I don't want to break the iPad screen by putting too much pressure. If I draw the line slowly, we can see that it's pretty thin. But if I draw it super fast, we can see that it's a lot thicker, which is really helpful in my drawings. For example, if I want to draw a piece of hair that goes back like this, we can see that there's parts that are thinner and thicker that makes a piece of work stand out a lot more. Another feature that iArtbook has is the ability to make a layer a clipping mask, which opened a bunch of doors of what I could add to my pieces, such as photo bashing. So an example of photo bashing is in the dress right here.
So it's when you have a layer of color and you'll add a clipping mask on top of it with a texture or a pattern that you want, and it'll go on to the layer below. So here on that dress example is photo bashing when I used a texture from a pre-existing Cinderella dress.
So their shapes tool is also nice as it had this align feature. So for example, if I wanted to draw a circle, I would click over here, shapes, and draw, I'll draw a circle here, and if I click this align button at the top left, it'll turn it into the perfect circle. Now you could also get this feature on Autodesk Sketchbook by using the predictive stroke line or the shapes tool, but it would be really hard to get it into the perfect circle instead of just a circular shape. Last but not least is the video time-lapse, which is located up here, where you can click export time-lapse video onto your device and use it for future purposes just to see how you did your process, or like me, just upload your videos onto YouTube. Also, although Autodesk Sketchbook had this feature as well, the problem with that was it records the moments when you zoom in like this, for example, to get into those details of your lines. So if I were to show you guys an example over here quickly. So as we can see here through this quick time-lapse video on Autodesk Sketchbook, it zooms in and out when I zoom in and out, which is a bit difficult to watch and gives me a headache when I watch it. So this is why for my speed paints, I like to start from the line art process because it's just really hard to watch the sketching process. I do show the different stages of my sketch just so people don't come for me, just to show that this is what my process looks like. So these are just some of my favorite things about the two free applications that I currently use on the iPad for digital art. There are a lot more functions that I haven't mentioned or just don't know about yet, so feel free to explore these two free apps if you think it's right for you. Thanks for watching everyone, and I hope this video helped a bit for anyone who's planning to pick up digital art.